First off, I want to thank the grace of heaven and the virtues of the masters, the mercy of the grand predecessors, the transmitting masters, and everyone here for this opportunity to talk about this topic, which is Affliction Is Bodhi. Okay, this is something that comes from the Platform Sutra, 6th Patriarch. That's what he said. Okay, so we want to understand let's see. All right, now, originally, you can say that we are all like Buddhas. Okay, so because we have this Buddha nature, the Buddha nature is the essence of being a Buddha. Okay, so, but we all have that. All sentient beings have that essence. And so in that sense, you can say that there is no distinction, no difference between what is a sentient being and what is a Buddha. Really, the only difference is internally, okay, in the mind, all right? So, understanding that we were originally Buddhas, therefore, we should all strive to return to, or to become a Buddha again, because right now, none of us are Buddhas, right? We're all sentient beings. And so this is, not the ideal state to be in. But realize that we were originally, Buddhas. We were all innocent, you can say, pure of mind, okay? And this Buddha nature, or this essence, is unchanging and eternal. So it has always been the same since who knows when the beginning is. But let's say, as a sentient being, we have been recycling or reincarnating for countless lifetimes. Countless, really. We have no idea when it started. From the very beginning, before, when we first became a sentient being and before, that Buddha nature, that essence, and today, the essence today that we have today is the same. There was no change. Basically, it has never increased nor decreased. So this was, so that is our true essence. Now, so what's the difference between this Buddha and the sentient being, right? So it's all internal. It's all in our mind. Whether the mind is pure or it's defiled, it's, whether it's unconditional or it's conditioned or conditional. Okay, so all right. All right. Okay, so we went from, originally the Bodhi is basically that enlightened or awakened mind. We ended up with affliction. Okay, affliction basically is what comes about when, sorry, let me mute everyone here. Okay, all right. Okay, so countless lifetimes ago, we developed a discriminating, it depends on the word that you want to use. You can say discriminating mind or deluded mind, or more, the broadest one would be ignorant mind. Okay, so you can use all three of these. Discriminating sounds a little bit more narrow, but it's basically, it's basically talking about a deluded or ignorant mind. Okay, so this is somehow we ended up like this, from having a pure mind, mind that is not deluded, okay, to one of delusion. All right, so how did this happen? Basically, this is okay. All right, so let me say what this is. That basically, this mind, this deluded mind or discriminating mind, abides in dualistic views that results in afflictions and karma. Okay, so there's dualistic views. The world we live in, it's dualistic. It's relative. Okay, and we tend to, because we're so used to it. It's like we take it. We assume it's natural that we behave or we view things in this way, right? We say, oh, it's good and bad, or likes and dislikes, things like that. This is all dualistic views, but it's because of these that causes us to end up having afflictions. Okay, afflictions is basically pain and suffering, or anything like that, or it could be like vexations, worries, annoyance, frustration, all these types of things that. Okay, so how do we end up getting here? Now, originally, like I said, we were all pure. We were innocent. Okay. Now, there is a story in the Bible, in the Old Testament Bible, right? Adam and Eve. Okay. So talking about Adam and Eve, which is like supposedly the beginnings of man. Okay. So the first humans in the Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden is paradise. Right. This is paradise. Okay. So now Adam and Eve originally they had. Or they were pure, they were innocent, right? And they also had, as a result, they had eternal life. Okay, eternal life is what we are seeking, right? Basically, that eternal life is having transcended. So there's no reincarnation. Okay, because right. So the problem is what happened there is that so the story goes this way. All right, so one day. They're in the Garden of Eden. And actually, this is God says, okay, you can eat of any of the plants, the trees, the fruits, the seeds of any of these plants and trees, except for the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Okay, so that's the only tree you can't touch, right? But, one day, I don't know, there's a snake. The snake appears and it tempts Eve. Okay, so it's tempting Eve, saying, "Hey, you should eat this fruit because this fruit will give you knowledge, and you'll know everything." And so Eve, well, I guess being so innocent, but she decides, yeah, sure, why not? And so she took the fruit, she ate the fruit, and she also gave it to Adam. Right, so they both ate the fruit. And so and as a result, they realized that, well, wait a minute, by taking the fruit, basically they became, they lost their innocence. All right, so this is, you can say it's also a symbolism, okay, for losing one's innocence, and they then realize that, wow, they're naked and they need to cover themselves up. They feel ashamed. They feel whatever. And so that came from that eating that fruit. So it's the knowledge of good and evil. Okay, so that's that duality. Originally, they didn't even have that duality. They didn't even think in those terms. Okay, it's just things just is. Things just are. It's just very natural. Okay, it's nature. But once they had this knowledge, then they start thinking, then there's certain things that are proper and improper. Okay, so it's actually very much like being like a baby. Okay, so a baby, we say they're innocent, right? But they don't know right from wrong, right? That we know. But they'll do whatever is very natural to them. Okay, but they have really no intent that like we have when we do things. Okay, and so that's very similar to the Adam and Eve in the very beginning. The humans were very pure and innocent, and they just did whatever was appropriate, whatever is natural. Okay, so this story, and then so basically what happened was, okay, so after they ate this fruit, then God, came looking for them and says, where are you guys hiding? Why are you guys hiding? And they're hiding themselves, because they feel naked, and basically they ate that fruit, and that God basically, told them they can't touch that fruit. So basically, they disobeyed God, and God said, "Okay, well, you disobeyed. You're going to be banished from the Garden of Eden, banished from paradise, and you will know death." Okay, that's what it says in the Bible. So you will know death. That means basically from this, it's obviously it's this is just the first step, but then basically it leads to karma, which leads to reincarnation. Okay, so that's what death is. Death is the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Okay, they no longer had eternal life. All right, so this is basically a story of of us as humans, as sentient beings, how we ended up like this. Now, how did Eve become tempted? Where did this temptation come? Where did that snake come from? Well, the problem is, if the longer we are exposed to the forms, the longer we are exposed to this environment that we're in, this is, we say it's a false world, it's a false environment because it's constantly changing. There's nothing eternal here. The longer we are exposed to it, and because we have, as we have this body, we have the physical, we have our senses, and the senses detect, what's going on, and eventually we, I don't know, I mean, we start distinguishing, and we start discriminating, and we start, saying liking and disliking things. Okay, the longer that we're exposed to this environment. Okay, so I don't know if there is some specific, someone tempting us, but originally I think it's just over time, gradually, that this happened. All right, so okay, all right, so yeah, so being born is basically the first step to having afflictions, right? Let's see. All right. So being born as well. So therefore, if we don't want to have afflictions, right? We don't want to suffer, then we should seek that eternal life, seek transcendence, transcending the cycle of life and death, okay, and rebirth, right? That is really the only sure way of doing that. But of course, while we're still here, we can try to reduce and maybe even eliminate these afflictions that we have. Okay, it's again, it's all in the mind. Okay, we'll get to that. All right. Okay, so the arising, how these afflictions start up. Okay, we have this deluded mind, or ignorant mind, or discriminating mind. Okay, now with this type of mind, we have preferences. Okay, things we like and dislike. I don't think there is anyone in the world who has absolutely no likes and dislikes. Okay, so we all have some kind of preferences. It's just a matter of degree and how many. All right, and so this is kind of, you can say this is the human condition. Okay, it's the human nature that we do this. But this is dual. This is what we're talking about, duality. Okay, there's like, and there's one side and the other side. Okay, and so the question is, what's to like or dislike? Okay, so we really need to understand that ultimately, if we can treat everything the same, equal, but it's really, everything is, when we have preferences, it's because it's going through our perception. Okay, our perception of things. So obviously, everyone's likes and dislikes are not the same, right? And so, so there's no absolute saying that, oh, everyone likes this and everyone does not like that. for the most part. Okay, and so these preferences are they're all basically personal. They're individual, and they come from that individual self. Okay, the other thing, right? So then obviously this sense of identity or self. Now we tend to identify with a label or a name. Right? Obviously, we go about through our lives having a name. Sometimes we change the name, but still we kind of depend on that name, right? Because that's what people call us. They're not going to say, "Hey, you." So they have to call us something, but then we become attached to this name, all right? And more than that, more than just a name, it's just it's beyond the self-identity. Also includes, what we look like, right? Maybe the things that we wear, things like that, or what we believe in, right? Our ideology. All of these things are part of our sense of identity, and so that's also leads to problems. Okay, because everyone has a different sense of identity. Obviously, names are different, but when you start looking at people, different color, different race, different religion, different nationalities, okay, or different, you can say, social status, things like this, then you really end up with discrimination. Okay, you have differences that could lead to discrimination, things like that. So this sense of identity. So this is actually part of what we call the 4 marks. I'll talk about that later. But that's something that we have to get rid of. Try to because this is probably the biggest source of afflictions. Okay, all right. And because we have this sense of identity, the self, that we also have attachments. Okay, so because without really, if there is no I or me, this ego, there's really nothing to become attached to. There's nothing to put the there wouldn't be attachments. But attachments are things, again, likes and dislikes. Those are types of attachments. Or desires, or we holding on to things, clinging to stuff, whether it's material things or even emotions or ideas, thoughts. All of these things are attachments. And if we can't let go, then that can cause problems for us, cause afflictions. Having things, right? We worry about, for example, like right now, in the past week or so, there have been all these, there's a lot of protests and rioting and looting, right? Yeah, we worry about, hey, are they going to, break down my door and loot, rob me or whatever? So the things that we have, we're afraid to lose it, right? These are attachments. Okay. Or even ideas, right? So we are too attached to an idea or an ideology or a doctrine, right? Then that can also run into conflict with others who have different ideas and ideologies. So this type of thing is, again, gives rise to all these afflictions. And then we tend to, a lot of times, we also make something out of nothing, right? Make a mountain out of a molehill, where there's no big deal, and we make a big deal out of it. So this is also due to, again, it's due to all these things, okay? And so this is also will create problems, right? The Buddha, I don't remember which Buddha, maybe his holy teacher, says basically, if we make something out of nothing, cause a problem out of no problem, no issue at all, then we have no blessings. Okay, so anyways, yeah, we should not create trouble, create problems out of nothing, or make small problems big problems. Okay, that's no good. Okay, so vexation, worries. Okay, so a lot of things that we mentally, right? Emotionally, we deal with. We have a lot of probably most of our issues, our vexations. I mean, our afflictions are are mental. Okay, so and because for the most part, I mean, unless we're in some really bad, situation, either health wise or whatever, it's most of our problems, the afflictions that we have are all mental. Okay, and so again, if you want to go back to where these things come from, it's having that deluded mind, having these attachments, having this sense of duality, all these things, sense of self. Okay, and then another thing is having complaints, disputes, contention, all these things that we do that we think it's normal. I mean, we go through life and experience all these things, have these things. We complain sometimes. It's not all the time, but or sometimes we have some disputes. Again, this is taking a position maybe that saying, "Oh, I'm right and you're wrong." Then you end up you have disputes. But this is falling into a duality, which ultimately is not the true way. It's not the way to become enlightened. Okay, so ultimately we need to let go of these. But okay, so anyways, these are all things that giving rise to these afflictions. All right, so now let me talk about these 4 marks. Sometimes translated, I think, as 4 images or 4 appearances. Okay, basically it's the I or the ego, the self, the sense of there's this me. Okay, and that I exist. Okay, and then so this is you can say from this, then you also have. So this is kind of like the I guess the basis of the other 3 marks. Okay, so the next mark is person. So person, being personality, you can say. Basically, that I am this person, okay, that I identify with this characteristics, having these characteristics, this personality, and that's who I am, okay. And then sentient being saying that, well, really, all actually that sentient beings or everyone, all living beings. They are basically defined by these 5 skandhas. Okay, so these are all sentient beings. That these 5 skandhas, which I'll talk about next, basically that's even as who we are, we believe that this is who we are. Okay, so this we have this sense of who we are. But this is really comes about from the 5 skandhas. Okay, so it's not real. It's not really who we really are. Okay, so this is something that's kind of you can say it's through because of our belief or acceptance of this 5 skandhas that that's who we believe we are, and so that's a delusion, right? And then finally, it's that we believe we have this life, that this one lifetime that we're living. Defines us too. That defines who we are. Ultimately, these are all delusions of the mind. Okay, so these are not real. So if we cling to any of these, especially that I, the first one, ego, then we're going to have problems. We're going to have affliction. We're not going to become enlightened. We're not going to become a Buddha. Okay. Let's see. All right. Okay. All right. So the 5 skandhas. These are skandhas. Really, it's translated as aggregates or heaps. Okay. So the first is talking about form and object. So form and object basically is, the world that we're in, right? The forms, the phenomena, if you will, and that refers to that, and also it refers to our sense organs, right? Because we're also have this physical body, right? So we have these physical sense organs of like our eyes, ears, nose, right? The mouth or the tongue, basically the body, right? The touch, and also our mind itself, the consciousness. Okay, so those are basically the six senses. Okay, so and I guess if we were a non physical being, like spirit form, whether we have, I don't. See, actually, okay, so we're talking about the physical, but actually there are, you can say these are the sense roots, okay, the organs, the sense roots, and so I don't know, I guess even when we're in spirit form, we tend to have, we can see things, probably hear things, sense, there are those senses still, so it's not just necessarily the physical ones, but, okay, so those are that's kind of, you can say, the external aspect. Okay, so everything else is kind of in our mind. Basically, the sensation. So the sensation is, I think it's sometimes they call that feeling. It's basically the interaction between the external forms, and our senses. Okay, so but of course in the case of our mind, right? Those would be our either thought objects, ideas, things like that. Okay, things that are only in our mind. But so this is sensation. So obviously, unless we are totally isolated, right, and we don't look at things, we don't hear, plug our ears, etc. We're gonna sense things. Okay, sense the world around us. All right, so this part, it's you can say, it's a given that we're gonna sense, have sensation. Now, this is where perception is the next step, or the next stage up, or the level. This is where we might be able to do something. Okay, so because perception is how we perceive, how we view. Or react, not yet react, but how we view this sensation that we're getting. Okay, so when I see something, basically the sensation is, okay, so when our eyes are open, we see, okay, but that's all, that's it. Okay, so perception is the next thing, is how we process what we see. Okay, so when we process what we see, let's say, then we can decide, we can start discriminating. We can start distinguishing, right? Say, oh, what I see is something that seems to be ugly to me, or seems, looks beautiful, or when I, taste something, right? It tastes, tastes great, or doesn't taste good. All these things. Okay, so that's coming from perception, and so this is the point of where Buddha talks about. If we want to break this cycle or get out of this, we do it here at perception, where we can basically, it's because this is all in our mind anyways, right? And so we can decide, well, if today, I say, oh, I don't like this thing, I don't like eating carrots or whatever, we can change our mind. Okay, we can change that, right? So that's happening here at perception. The next is volition and action. Basically, as a result of our perception of things, then that leads us to take action, or we have this will or want to do something as a result. So if I, ate something that's just tasted so terrible, I want to spit it out. Okay, so that's at this level, and so. That's okay. So that basically, this volition action follows from the perception, how we perceive things, and of course everyone perceives things differently, right? So this is one of the things where we say that reality, how we perceive. In science we tend to say, oh, it's objective reality is what science can tell us, right? But the reality, I don't know, the true reality, I guess, I don't know. Is that we experience reality differently. Everyone does. Okay, so it depends on our perception, because everyone probably will feel, sense pretty much the same. Maybe not. There might be some differences here too, but mostly the differences will be at perception and above. Okay, so and then finally attachment or conscious attachment, where that it leads to this you have a volition or action or intent. Eventually, it leads to attachment, where it's like, oh, okay, so this, I know that this thing is good or this thing is bad. I avoid it. Okay, so or I want more of it. Okay, so then it becomes an attachment, and it's in our mind all the time, and so the people who are looting, it's like they have this attachment to oh, they want to rob that jewelry store, right? Because jewelry or whatever, it's worth something, it's worth a lot, right? They want it, and then they act on it. Okay, so this is something. But basically, anyways, this is the what's called the five skandhas, and this is what people are sentient beings believe that because of this. I mean, that this is their reality. Okay, that their reality is viewed through the five skandhas. Okay, but Buddha is saying, all the sutras, basically like the Heart Sutra, is saying that this is empty. This is not real. It's not true. Okay, so but yeah, so anyways, the four marks. The three minds. I didn't mention the three minds. Three minds is basically, so the four marks deals with the self and others and the life. Basically, you can say it's kind of like dealing with the you can say space aspect, and the three minds deals with the time aspect, which is the past, present, and future. Okay, so again, it's our notion of time. This is how humans view time. I think from the Buddha's point of view, time isn't how we view time. Okay, for them it's just in the moment. Okay, so everything is in the moment. That moment is eternal. For us, though, we see this time as being something that's linear. There's a past, present, and future, and we tend to also become attached to these things. Okay, so to these different time frames as well, and that also causes problems. Okay, so basically these things, so the four marks, which includes these five skandhas, basically lead, and so basically attachment, right, to the four marks and the three minds, they lead to a deluded mind. Okay, so this deluded mind, I think I am this person, and this is who I am, this is my personality, everything. But then having that deluded mind, that just leads to affliction. All right. Okay. Now, in the the Platform Sutra, right, sixth patriarch, Senshu, he's the senior disciple of the fifth patriarch, right? So he says that this is basically the fifth patriarch is testing, or he wants to find out who's worthy, who's enlightened, who's worthy to basically become the sixth patriarch. Right? So essentially he's actually the senior disciple, and he all the other monks in there, or monks, they believe that Senshu is he's probably the one who deserves it and should get it. But so the fifth patriarch says, write me a poem that describes or gives gives you your understanding of what the Buddha nature is. Okay, so he writes this poem, right? The body is a Bodhi tree, the mind like a stand of mirror bright. Time and again brush it clean and let no dust alight. This is on the one level, at the human, from the normal human view of things, this is not wrong. Okay, this is correct. I mean, saying that, yeah, we have defilements, we have these attachments, we have desires, we have afflictions, and we have to constantly work on getting rid of these. Okay, And so, okay, so that's his view, which is pretty much, that's pretty normal view, I would say. So that's not really an enlightened view. And so this is similar to basically, there are these three stages, okay? Basically, the first stage is where, the saying goes, when I see a mountain, it's a mountain. And when I see a river, or the water, it's a river. Okay, so basically I'm seeing things just as they are. But this is basically at a superficial level, okay, that we're seeing things, right? So that's to me, I equate, what Sun Shu said with this level. This is the basic level that everyone, would understand or view the world, okay. Now, so Wei Neng, okay, so he's the sixth patriarch to be. Now he had heard that there was, someone, because he worked in the kitchen, right? So he's like pounding rice, and so he never actually listened to any of the fifth patriarch's teachings, Dharma. Okay, so because he's always working in the kitchen, and in fact, he's illiterate too, but he has wisdom. So when he heard that, someone had written this poem, and he couldn't read it either, so he had to have someone read it to him, and once he heard it, then he asked the person to write. He says, I have a poem too that you can write on the wall. So this is what he said. There is no Bodhi tree, nor stand of a mirror bright, since all is void, work in the dust of light. Well, if you compare this to what Sun Shu said, it's kind of like the opposite of what Sun Shu said. Okay, so it says, no, there's no Bodhi tree, there's no mirror. Everything is void, empty. So how can the dust be anywhere? So how can you become basically defiled? How can you have afflictions? So this is obviously taking a different view, but it's the opposite of what Sun Shu said. And so this basically is the second stage, where we see a mountain, but we say it's not a mountain. We see a river, we say it's not a river. Basically saying that, we know that, all things are false. Okay, all these dharmas, these phenomena is false. They don't exist. Okay, and so he's saying it's basically it's empty. So that there's nothing there to become you don't really have to do it to cultivate or do any of that. So this is, but the problem is that. This isn't the ultimate either. A lot of people, I think they think, emptiness. That's the ultimate, right? So when you do meditation, to meditate on emptiness. They think that's the goal. But that's not really. It's the emptiness is just the opposite of having something there. Okay, so this is just the opposite of what Sun Shu said. So this is still part of that duality. Okay, whether it's empty or whether there's some form or non-form, no form. It's still part of the duality. All right, so that is still also not the ultimate. Okay, now, all right. So, but the fifth patriarch, having heard this, or he saw the poem, and because of what's going on in that monastery, the monks, they were kind of because the monks also saw this, and they said, "Wow, this guy is enlightened. He's going to be a living bodhisattva." But the monks, because he's new, right? Hui Neng is new there, he hadn't been there for too long, whereas Sun Shu was there for a long time. And the other monks, they kind of all defer to Sun Shu. They follow him, and so the fifth patriarch, he felt that he knew that Hui Neng, of course, is close to being enlightened. He's close. Okay, he's not all the way there, but he's certainly better than higher level than Sun Shu. Okay, and so, but he also knew that the monks in that monastery, they're going to be jealous, okay? Because if Hui Neng becomes the sixth patriarch, they probably won't accept that answer. They won't accept that. All right. So he erased it, and said, "Oh no, this is also not the answer." But actually before that, the fifth patriarch said, okay, everyone should recite the Sun Shu's poem and follow that in their practice. Okay, so but anyways, so the fifth patriarch then later that night, I guess, he went to the kitchen to see Hui Neng when no one else was watching. He went to see, and he kind of asked Hui Neng whether the rice is ready, because he's pounding rice. Okay, so and Hui Neng says it's already been ready for a long time, just waiting for the sieve. Okay, so then the fifth patriarch understood and just knocked 3 times on I guess the pestle or whatever, and he didn't say a word. He just left. And then so Hui Neng, he being very wise, okay, so he has wisdom. He understood what the fifth patriarch meant by the 3 knocks. Okay, so it means to go see the fifth patriarch at the 3rd watch at night. Okay, so he went to his quarters to see him at night, and that is when the fifth patriarch basically transmitted the Dharma, the true Dharma. Basically, you can say it's like transmitting the Tao, but he's actually transmitting the mandate, okay, for being the next patriarch to Hui Neng. All right, and when that happened, okay, so after being certified, Hui Neng then says, "Wow, how amazing that the self-nature is originally pure. How amazing that the self-nature is unborn and undying. How amazing that the self-nature is inherently complete. How amazing that the self-nature neither moves nor stays. How amazing that all dharmas come from this self-nature." Okay, so in this case, when we're talking about dharmas here, all dharmas come from the self-nature. It means all phenomena, everything. Okay, everything comes from the self-nature. In other words, you can say that everything is contained within the self-nature, and the self-nature is this Buddha nature. Okay, so he realized that it's not just empty. Okay, it's everything is contained within this emptiness, right? So in Chinese they say, "真空妙有." It's not just empty, but there's some marvelous existence or something to it. Okay, there's something there, right? Okay, so right. So basically, what happened was, when fifth patriarch, he was actually explaining the Diamond Sutra to Hui Neng, and he got to the point where it says, "The mind should cling to nothing when it acts." Then Hui Neng understood and became enlightened. All right, so basically, the fifth patriarch says, if one recognizes the original mind, the original nature, he is called a great man, a teacher of gods and humans, and a Buddha, right? So then that's when he passed the robe and the bowl to Hui Neng as a sign that he is now the next patriarch. Okay, so basically, yeah. Okay, so that you can see there that, all right. Here, so these 3 stages. So basically, that's when he became enlightened is the 3rd stage here, where it says to see a mountain is still a mountain, to see a river is still a river. Okay, so this is different from that first stage where we see a mountain is a mountain, a river is a river. Basically, we realize the difference is internal. Okay, it's in the mind. Okay, so that basically at this enlightened stage, this 3rd stage, which is the stage of enlightenment, that everything is as it is. It just is. Okay, and everything arises from that mind. Okay, or arises from the Buddha nature, and so it's not empty. It's not like that second one. Now, most of us, I would say, are once we a lot of people, they're probably still at the first stage where they're just viewing things very superficially. This is the way it seems. Okay, but then as we learn more, as we learn about when we come to class and we learn all these principles and dharmas, that we say, because everyone keeps saying, oh, everything is false, right? Don't pursue all these things, the material stuff, all these things are false. It doesn't last, okay? And so that's the second stage. It's kind of saying, no, this is not real, so we shouldn't pursue these things. But at the same time, we live in this world, and so, but okay, so that third one then is kind of taking the more enlightened view, or the holistic view, saying, well, yeah, things do exist. They're temporary, yes, they're transient, but we still have to make use of it in our lives. Okay, we still have to make use of it to help us to gain enlightenment. All right, so hopefully we're at least on the second stage and maybe working our way to the third stage, right? All right. Okay. Okay, so this is also from the Platform Sutra, and this is he's now the sixth patriarch. Okay, so he says, enlightened audience, ordinary people are Buddhas, and affliction is Bodhi. Okay, so that's where that title comes from. Okay, in a moment with deluded mind, we are an ordinary person. In the next moment, with awakened mind, we are a Buddha. Clinging to states of being in one moment is affliction. Detaching in the next moment is Bodhi. Okay, so, the state, let's see. All right. So basically, what Sixth Patriarch is saying is that, right, that everything is in the mind, that it is, you can say, that is a different state of mind. Okay, so it depends. It's whether we are an ordinary person, a sentient being, or a Buddha, is all depending on the state of mind. Okay, so it doesn't matter, how much external stuff or things that we acquire externally, whether it's knowledge or wealth or power or any of these things, that doesn't matter, right? Because when Huineng came to see the fifth patriarch, the fifth patriarch asked him, what are you here for? And why are you coming here? And Huineng says, I want to become a Buddha. And so the fifth patriarch said, well, you're a barbarian from the south. You have no, how can you become a Buddha? And that's kind of a test. And Huineng replied, although different people, they come from different backgrounds, right? But they all have the same Buddha nature. Okay, so basically, the most important thing is whether we can become a Buddha or not is based on having that Buddha nature, right? So it doesn't matter what our education level is, or what our status is, or anything like that. Okay, so anyone can become a Buddha because they all have that Buddha nature, right? Okay. Okay. Oh, and so basically, I mean, it's we have to detach. So this again, clinging or basically attachments, right, to the states of being. Basically, the whether it's those four marks, and also, we need to let go of those. Okay. So if we can detach from those, have no ego, no self, then we can become a Buddha right then and there. So I think maybe we go through in life, we go through many cycles of or moments of being sentient being. Well, probably most of the time, maybe 99% of the time, we're a sentient being. But there are a few moments where we have that Bodhi mind, where we're like a Buddha. Okay, we're awakened for that instant, but then we quickly forget, and we quickly go back to our old attachments and our dualistic views again, and so then we become a sentient being again. So the question is, so the trick is to have that Bodhi mind at all the time, or longer, more than what it is today. All right. Okay. All right. So there's this other thing here. So also, So after Hui Neng, basically, or the sixth patriarch, he he had to go into hiding actually after he got his the robe and the bowl. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff that's going on. He had to go into hiding. He went and he lived in the woods, with hunters for 15 years. So during those times, he had to cultivate. Okay, so he had to work on, he had to practice. Okay, so it was, it's not just that he became enlightened and that's it, that he's done. He still needed to go through that process of cultivation. So we all do. Okay, so don't think that I understand. I'm enlightened. I will awake, and that's it. We have to cultivate. Okay, because we're not even close to being at Hui Neng, the six patriarchs level. Okay, but anyways, so after the 15 years, it was time for him to come back into the society and to start teaching, spreading the Dharma. And so he came to this monastery and he saw these two monks. They're arguing about a flag blowing in the wind. Okay, and basically the first monk says, "Oh, the flag is moving, right? Because it's blowing in the wind." The second monk says, "No, the wind is moving." And so this is basically what the two monks, right? They're abiding duality. One is saying, "Oh, I'm right, you're wrong." So they're taking two different views of this. But I mean, from our point of view, you can say from a scientific point of view, you can say yes, the first monk is right, the flag is moving, and also the second monk is right, the wind is also moving, right? The wind is causing the flag to move, but the wind is definitely moving as well. So from a scientific point of view, there's nothing wrong with this, but this is in duality. So what the sixth patriarch says, it says, no, your mind is moving. Okay, so basically, the sixth patriarch is not taking a position who's right and who's wrong. Actually, you can say they're all right, but you can say from different perspectives. Okay, so from a scientific perspective, you can measure things, you can detect things, whatever, and those first two are right. But ultimately, it's the mind that's moving. The mind is perturbed. Okay, the mind is basically, I saw this flag moving, and then I decided, oh wait, it's moving, or it's the wind that's doing it, and so the mind it gives rise to these thoughts, right? So, but sixth patriarch, what his answer is basically non-dualistic, because of non-duality. Okay, it's the mind. Okay, and so the minds of the monks are perturbed. And they're obviously they're looking at it from kind of a superficial view of things, but again, it's their view is based on basically the five skandhas, okay, and the four marks, all of that, okay. So it's not, those aren't enlightened views. That's kind of very normal. Most of us, we all have those views, the same type of view. All right, okay, so everything arises from mind, right? The perturbed mind is a deluded mind, the mind of ignorance, and this is the mind that moves. Okay, so, all right. Okay, so as a sentient being, we can become a Buddha. Again, because we have that Buddha nature, that is the essence of a Buddha, and so it's all there. We have. It's all there. Okay, so it's so sometimes they say, use the analogy, we there's this gem, there's hidden gem. We have this hidden gem, and it's like the raw gem that comes from the earth, so it's covered up. It's maybe encased in rock, and so you can't see the gem, and so you have to chip away at the outside to see the gem that's inside. And that's kind of what this process of cultivation is about, to ultimately get to that gem that's inside, that perfect self. Okay, okay, so now to become a Buddha, though, right, we have to use affliction to realize the Bodhi mind. Okay, so sometimes we say, affliction is no good. I don't want affliction. Why should I have affliction? Why don't we just get rid of it? Just try to avoid it completely. basically we use affliction to realize the Bodhi mind, okay, to realize, to help us to become awakened, right? Last week I did mention that we borrow the false to cultivate the true, right? So in this case, basically, we have to borrow these afflictions to cultivate our true mind, the mind of you can say, the Bodhi mind. Okay, so basically, it's a question of how we want to view things. So we should always, when we have afflictions, then we should self-reflect. Okay, do not abide in duality, saying, oh, I don't like this or I like this. And so when afflictions arise, they are as they are, and we should just deal with it appropriately. And usually, we should always have that sense of reflecting on ourselves. Why did this happen to me? Not complaining, but to realize that, oh, okay, well, this is happening probably because of my actions, because of whatever, because of how I view things, my perspective, things like that. Okay, so self-reflection is really one of the keys in cultivation to trying to get to understand that Bodhi, get to that Bodhi mind, right? So how we view these afflictions, right? We can view it as, like the cup being half empty or being half full, right? If we view afflictions as being half empty, or it's like, oh, these are undesirable. But anytime we encounter things that are undesirable, that cause us problems, if we view it that way, then we're always going to have these problems, right? Ultimately, we can't necessarily control whether we get these problems or afflictions. And so why not turn things around and view things as being half full, cup half full, and say, hey, this is an opportunity for me to reflect on myself and to improve myself, right? And so basically perception is everything. Perception is everything, okay? And that is really, you can say, the difference between a sentient being and a Buddha is how they perceive things, okay? So, all right. Right, so just like happiness, right, doesn't depend on what you have or who you are, it solely relies on what you think. So it doesn't matter what our physical or material limitations are, that we have, because ultimately it's all in the state of mind, right? I don't need $1 million to be happy, right? Now, some people, if they're not happy with $1 million, then there's a problem, because they have desires, they have whatever, they want more, right? So that's greed, you can say. There's no contentment. So when there's no contentment, you're not going to have happiness. But anyway, so it's all in the mind, that we have to kind of watch what's in our mind. Okay. And again, this last week I talked about these basically. So how do we get from affliction to Bodhi, right? So we have to have wu-wei, this effortless or motiveless action, right? There's no intention and there's no self. Okay, when there's no intention, there's no self. And this is kind of the internal side. And the external side of, you can say, of this equation is the sui-yin, which is flowing with the affinity. Okay, so without forcing, there's also no self, because forcing comes from our intent. And so without intent, there is no self. So there is also no self. So, and this is the external aspect. So if we can follow this, if we can actually do everything like this, then we can get rid of our ego, the 4 marks, right, all that. But I know this is not easy, because it basically, we have to get rid of our preferences, get rid of all those things, right, in order to achieve this. And so for the most part, most of us are not able to do these two all the time. Sometimes maybe we can, but not all the time, because we still have preferences, we still have attachments, we can't let them go, right? And then so all those different practices, like the 6 paramitas here I talked about last week, these are all to help us to basically go from a sentient being to become a Buddha, all right, to achieve that. And so these things, they all help us, right? All right, and then there are other things like the 4 subjects of cultivation too, which cultivating on our moral character, virtues and merits, tolerance, forbearance, or refinement, and propriety. So all the things that the different methods, if you will, the different methods, the purpose is really to have us get rid of those 4 marks, right? The self, that ego. And get rid of our attachments, and so that we can become enlightened. All right. So they're all different ways to do that, right? And then so of course we end up, if we have basically we try to have these type of things. This is again from last week. These are the 4 immeasurable minds. As an enlightened being would have these. Okay, so although we cannot do these at the level of a bodhisattva or a Buddha, we take steps. We can start at a lower level and to try to achieve this. Right? Okay, so ultimately, it's we have to conquer ourselves, overcome our this idea, this attachment, basically, to who I think I am, right? And so we have to have a different view, and that's what Buddha is trying to teach us through, of course, the 4 Noble Truths about what life is, and that it is suffering. There's affliction, that we cause that ourselves through our desires, our attachments, right? But that there is a way, there's an end, we can end, because anything that has a beginning has an end, and we can end that, and it's through following basically the middle way, what we call the middle way, or this Tao, okay? So basically, so this practice, everything is really directed internally, okay? And so we have to conquer our mind. If we cannot conquer our mind, then we cannot become enlightened. We cannot become a Buddha. Okay, so no matter how much what we do externally, the mind is what matters the most. All right. Okay, so just like these, this is basically when there's, instead of having confrontation, right? We try to love one another. We love all sentient beings. Okay, we don't confront. Instead of being suspicious, we trust others. Instead of being indifferent, we care for others. Instead of criticizing others, we can compliment others. Instead of bickering, we can be more magnanimous. Okay, instead of envy or jealousy, we can rejoice in others. Okay, with others. Instead of being greedy, we can give. Right. Instead of being angry or have hatred, we can be more gentle. Instead of being stuck on the rights and wrongs, what's right and wrong, we can be more dispassionate. Instead of having disputes, we can introspect. Instead of making life so complex, we can simplify things. Okay, and then finally, we have to even let go of the thought of letting go, because it becomes an attachment that I need to let go. I mean, that's what we're taught, right? We have to let go of a lot of things. Let go of this ego, let go of the self. But if we still have that thought at the end, maybe we've let go of the self, but then we're still not letting go of this letting go. So we have to let go, and then we can be thus. Then we are free, and then we are basically we are one. Okay, so these are basically the 12 relinquishments, okay, things that let go. So the things on the outside are basically those are cause afflictions, and the inside, it's not like basically two opposites, but what's the inside? So that's why I said the middle way is, so it doesn't go, you don't go from one extreme to the other extreme. It's basically the things in the middle are to let us try to get to the middle way. Okay, so we don't like say, oh, let's see, I mean, like, so criticism and compliment. Okay, you might say that these are kind of opposite, but for the most part, compliments, criticism can cause problems. Compliments usually don't, as long as we don't take compliments and go to the other extreme, which is say, things like we say things that are not necessarily true, right? And so that's not what this is about. This is saying, so to try to get away from these things on the outside that cause all sorts of problems for us, all these afflictions, and cause us karma too. And so to get away from that and moving more towards the middle, all right, the middle way, because that is really what the Tao, or this, the path to enlightenment is that middle. We have to take that middle way. Okay. All right. There's this thing called this faith mind inscription. I guess it's like maybe it's a poem. I guess it's written by the third patriarch, actually. Third patriarch, okay, Sun Can, okay, Sun Can, okay, so he basically, and this is only a few of the verses from this faith mind inscription, okay. So it says, the great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. When love and hate are both absent, everything becomes clear and undisguised. Okay, it becomes very understandable. A hairbreadth's difference sets heaven and earth apart. For the way to manifest, likes and dislikes must depart. Okay, so again, what he's talking about is this: we can't abide in that duality of like and dislike, and this differentiation, this discrimination. We have to get away from that and not be attached to those things. Okay, and then also, the duality of all things comes from false discriminations. In the Dharma realm of true suchness, there are neither self nor others, right? So just like in those 4 marks, there's the self and then there's others, right? But that's a false view, okay, is what he's saying. Because that view is a view of duality, right? Because we're all one. Anyways, okay, and then so it says, have faith in the non-duality of mind. Right, the non-duality is faith in mind. Beyond the realm of words and speech, it is neither present, future, nor past. Okay, so again, this is so we have to have a mind that's non-dualistic. Okay, and not be attached to any particular thing. So not being attached means you won't have any of these preferences either, and it's also not attached to the time. Any specific times, like past, present, and future. Okay, so this is all. I mean, the poem is very long, and I just have these four verses here. But just to give you an idea, it's exactly what he's talking about. It's the same thing. Okay, so basically all enlightened masters, they all talk about the same thing. Okay, but they talk about it in different ways. In this case, this is kind of more direct. It's more closer to. I mean, it's very similar to what we were just talking about. Okay, so so basically, sentient beings, they all have afflictions. Okay, that's you can say that's a definition of sentient being, because they're not enlightened. They have these attachments. They have this dualistic mindset, and so those lead to having afflictions. Okay. And it's basically, it comes about from having that diluted mind. Okay, so perception, but perception is everything. Okay, so everything comes from that perception. So whether whether we become a Buddha or not all depends on our perception. So having the right view, right? So that's a Buddha saying that in the Noble Eightfold Path, right? Right view is the first path, and we have to have that right view. So right view is basically having the right perception of things. And so if that's wrong, then everything that follows is going to be wrong, going down the wrong path. Okay, so So without now, the thing here is that without sentient beings, we cannot become Buddhas ourselves. Okay, so that's why these are two. They're linked together. All right, these two are linked. So affliction and Bodhi are linked, and so is sentient being and Buddha. All right, so basically, Buddhas all were sentient beings before. Okay, so to become just like Gautama Buddha, Siddhartha, right? He was a human, and he lived, he just like us as sentient beings in the beginning, but then he became a Buddha. Okay, so there's nothing that he really gained. I mean that he got from someone else that made him that. Okay, so again, it's all in the mind that we can change. We have to decide for ourselves whether we want to become a Buddha, right? But there's also the external and internal sentient beings, right? The external sentient beings are other sentient beings, but we also have a sentient being, that's us. Okay, we are also a sentient being ourselves, right? So we need to transform ourselves into a Buddha. And then the external sentient beings help us in that we can perform merits, we can do the external type of cultivation that allow us to become a Buddha as well. So I think there's a saying that without sentient beings, how can we become Buddhas? Okay, so this is all part of you can say, is the whole package that we are part of this, and we have to make use of it. Okay, so again, this is having the proper view, the right view. Okay, so basically we need to flip this mental switch, right? And eliminate the ignorance and deluded mind while revealing the Bodhi mind. That is really what, having that perception, change in perception, right? If it's very, I don't know, it sounds easier than it is, I guess. It's just like flipping a light switch. When you turn on the light switch and, in an instant, darkness turns into light. But that's true, actually, that in an instant, we have that Bodhi mind. The question is, we're like constantly turning off that light switch, okay, and going into the darkness again. And so we need to turn it on and hopefully keep it on at least longer than we normally do, right? Okay, so basically reveal, so we want to reveal the Bodhi. So what we think, we become. Basically, again, it's all in the mind. If we decide to, so again, afflictions, we want to, don't necessarily say, naturally, when we get to that right level, when we get to that level of cultivation, if you will, or of that mindset, that naturally afflictions, they no longer become afflictions. Okay, so, so for now, because we're just, you can say we're beginning at the beginning level, maybe, that we have to view afflictions not in the normal way that most sentient beings view it, as saying, oh, this is, this bothers me, whatever. We have to turn things around. We have to change that, turn it around, saying that this is something that can help me. Okay, so that's basically it. That's turning that, flipping that switch. Okay, so let's see what we think. Okay, so that's, yeah. Okay, so that's it. Anyways, the time is up, and I hope that you have a little bit better understanding about our mind. Basically, this is cultivation. The external part of the cultivation is important, but the internal one, that is more the key. If we don't understand our own mind, how it works, and how we can change that mindset, then it'll be very difficult for us to achieve enlightenment. And so I hope that everyone can be successful in their cultivation, in realizing their Bodhi mind, and becoming a Buddha. Again, so may the Tao be with you. If I had said anything wrong or not well, I ask the Buddhas for forgiveness, and also for the transmitting masters and lecturers for their corrections. Okay, thank